Welcome to Homicide Life on the Set, a podcast about the Emmy Award-winning television show Homicide Life on the Street, with myself, Chris Carr, and Susan Ingram. On today's podcast, we're joined by actor Kyle Secor, who played Detective Tim Bayliss. And on this episode, Kyle shares his memories of working on the show both as an actor and a director, and what it was like working with the late Andre Braugher, who played his on-screen partner, Detective Frank Pembleton. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Homicide Life on the Set. Susan, how are you doing?
Hello. Hi, Chris. Looking forward to talking about this episode with Kyle.
Yeah. Well, if people haven't guessed already, we have Tim Bayliss himself, Kyle Secor. He's here today to join us to talk about his time on Homicide. And I think it's a very interesting chat. There's lots of interesting pieces that we will reflect on after the conversation. Susan, was there something you wanted to say before we get going?
Yes, I did want to dedicate this episode to my mom, Margaret Ingram, who was a great fan of the show and was really, really looking forward to listening. But unfortunately, she died just a few days before we spoke to Kyle, I think less than a week. And was also a week and a half or so before we aired our first episode. She was particularly fond of the partnership between Kyle and Andre Braugher, who she had great admiration for, both of them. And she had met Andre because Andre attended the First Unitarian Church where my parents went. So the Kyle episode, I know she would have particularly been interested in hearing about him and hearing about his relationship and working relationship with Andre. Other than that, she was a great fan all the way through of the show and thought it was terrific and intelligent. So this is dedicated to you, Mom. Hope you're listening.
Thank you for sharing that, Susan. And I'm very sorry for your loss. Okay, everybody, we're going to move into our interview with Kyle Secor. I hope you enjoy this one. Kyle, welcome to Homicide Life on the Set, our brand new podcast. It's great to have you on.
Oh, it's really great to be here. I was so excited to hear from Susan, and I've been hearing from a lot of Homicide people since December, and when Andre died, and
Yeah.
so it's been really it's good to kind of come on and do this, definitely.
Yeah, and we've just passed, I think, the 30th anniversary of the show starting as well, haven't we?
No,
Sorry to make you feel bad.
No, we didn't. It's only been 5 years, hasn't it?
Which was crazy because when Chris and I started talking about this, that didn't even register that it was the 30th anniversary. And he contacted me just about a year ago, last year, 2023, which would have been the 30th anniversary year. And we sort of happenstance started talking about doing a podcast. And then all of a sudden it starts hitting the New York Times. I saw you got interviewed for the New York Times it's the 30th anniversary.
Yeah. I mean, it's wild because I mean, truly, I don't, right after Homicide ended, I met the woman that I would eventually marry and had kids. And I haven't had really a lot of time. I don't think about Homicide an awful lot. I never really went back and watched episodes. I didn't, I stayed in contact with a couple of people through the years, but didn't really think about it too much until like an interview would come up or something. And then I'd scramble and go, what were those episodes that they want to know were the best episodes ever? I don't know.
Right.
So I would like kind of, so that's what happened when you contacted me and send me all these questions. I was just like going, wow, this is really, I don't remember anything. Wait, that was, so it's crazy. My mind about the sequence of episodes and certain things are just a jumble.
Mm.
And the questions that you had also asked about, shooting styles and such like that. And I had just kind of basically forgotten, other than that we shot really cool and really fast. That's it. So anyway, but I've educated myself in the past few days. Ask away.
Right. Absolutely.
Carl, how did you kind of get started into acting in the film business?
Yeah. So I came from a place called Federal Way, Washington, which if you haven't heard about it, that's all right. Neither is most people. And that's so I started there, and I was, my big thing is I was going to be a pizza maker for the rest of my life. I worked at a place called Shakey's Pizza and assistant manager, and I was working my way up at Shakey's. And then I went and saw a friend of mine from high school in a play at this community college, and I went, wow, that used to be a lot of fun. And there was a lot of very beautiful women in there, and he was great. And so I went, oh, that's what I'm going to do. Having no clue how to do it, how to get about. We didn't have, there was no internet. There's no clue. There was no one from my hometown who ever went on and became an actor.
Yeah.
In anything, I think, of any significance. And I just went, okay, I'll do that. And that's what I did. And I came down to Los Angeles. And because I didn't have a plan, and because I just, had some ideal about, learning how to be an actor, it took me about 6 or 7 years before I got my first gig in Los Angeles. And yeah, so that's how I went about it, just sort of, kind of stumbling into learning how to do these things on my own. I didn't, I'd go to certain classes and such, just kind of came up with, a way of working that was helpful at a certain point.
Yeah. Excellent. And so how did you end up on Homicide: Life on the Street?
So I had done St. Elsewhere with Tom, and it was the last season of St. Elsewhere, which was it was just a great season. And he had wanted me to, or I'd been called in for this audition, and I went in and I auditioned for Danny Baldwin's character.
Oh, interesting.
And I went, oh, I'm completely wrong for this. Okay. And then I went over to Germany to go study some more, because I was always studying. I always wanted to pick up things. I was over in Germany studying, and they called me over in Germany. I have no clue how they got a hold of me, and said, they want you back here to as a callback for another character. And I said, I'm studying. And I was kind of on a track just to do movies. I thought of myself as a film actor. No one says that anymore these days. It's just, it doesn't make any sense.
You can't now,
Yeah.
right?
And so I stayed over in Germany as long as possible and came back and was, sure that it had gone away. And then I got a call and they said, oh, come in and we want you to read for this. And I thought it was the Danny Baldwin character again. So I went, okay, I'll come in. I didn't really want to do it. I didn't want to do TV. I came in, they said, oh no, not that character, this character. Here, look over these sides and then you'll read in about 5 minutes. So I gave this reading, and I thought I was horrible. And then someone gave me David Simon's book to read. And I read the book and I went, what? That's not what detectives do. They do that. They talk like regular human beings, and they have these concerns about their lives, and they talk this way in front of corpses. Oh no. So I read it and I thought, okay. I said, I still don't want to do TV. But this thing wouldn't go beyond one season. That's too good. So then I was called back in again to meet with Tom and Barry Levinson. And I thought, oh, this is just to kind of discuss things. And they offered me the role of Tim Bayliss in the room. And Tom said he said, oh, by the way, in the 6th episode, it's just going to be you and 2 other guys in an interrogation room. Yeah. And okay, so the actor in me just goes, what?
Wow.
Okay, I'm in. And like the calculations were going on. This won't go beyond one season. I get to do this amazing episode and then go back and do my film career thing that I was on a track for. And so that's how I got involved with coming to do Homicide. There was no other than him offering that little carrot. That was my reason for coming. And then I saw all of the actors that they had pulled in, and it was just when we got to Baltimore, it was just a whole other world and education.
And interesting that you said it wasn't going to last past the season, because when Barry picked up the book and apparently pitched it to Tom and said, "I want to do a cop show with no gun battles and no car chases," and Tom is like, "What? That's never going to go anywhere."
Right, which it almost didn't,
and obviously it did.
Yeah,
and having it hold on for 7 seasons is kind of
that's
amazing.
what it was. It was like there was lots of tight gripping on for every time, because I don't know if we ever were given more than, here's a few episodes here and there. And then all of a sudden, then we started getting full seasons. But it was always, I believe, a struggle on Tom's part, because we just people didn't know what to make of the show. But the people that did know what to make of the show became the rabid fans of however many million that was. But, yeah.
And there was always that chatter when it came around to renewal time. We'd be all day on the set wondering whether we had a job, next season for sure.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah. I was at I remember, I was at I was at a yoga retreat. Again, I'm going off somewhere else to get away from, and I was up outside of Helena, Montana. And it was at that time that we were figuring out if we were coming back for, I think it was the 2nd or the 3rd season, something like that. And I was like, always like, getting out of a pose, going up to get on the phone. And I was really at that point, so it must've been the 3rd season. So I was kind of committed to the show and to the cast and crew. And I really wanted it to go on, because I saw it was I thought, incredible value. And I remember Tom and I must have had like 4 or 5 conversations with me going, did we get the pickup? Well, I don't know. Go back into Downward Facing Dog.
Right.
Forget about it.
Exactly.
I can see why you became the Zen detective, and was it season 7? I think it was.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, they picked our minds, all of us, for everything, for all sorts of things, to see where they could take storylines. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Your character, was he inspired by one of the real detectives? Is that right? Is that what they were kind of looking for? Or
yeah, it was the character in the book, or the real person in the book, is Tom Pellegrini.
Right, Pellegrini. I couldn't remember. Right.
And Tom was a pretty remarkable guy who was, when the Adina Watson in the book, there's another name, there's the real name, but the Adina Watson case, he was pretty, it never got solved, and that affected his life in a very heavy, somewhat detrimental in some aspects. I mean, he continued being a detective, but it always, haunted him. And meeting him was just key for me. And there was, and he had in the first episode, and the way I remembered it was different. I thought he just showed up on the set, but they gave him a role in the first episode when we discover the young girl's body.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I've completely forgotten about that. And he made it his job in between setups because it was raining, a lot of rain, to keep her dry. And I was just like sitting back, watching him and seeing his concern, and seeing that there was a toll that had been taken, and that this was I don't know, it was something where he was going to do something to make it better by keeping a young actress dry.
He was connecting on a different level than an actor on the street, right?
Completely.
Wow. And I didn't work on the first season, so I did not know that he was in that in that episode. I've got to go back and look at that again.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if he came back after the first season. He was there at least on the set 3 or 4 times in different episodes. And he and I had lunch together, and we talked a lot about his life and stuff. So for me, it was like a really great insight into his psyche.
Did you do any ride-alongs or anything with detectives?
Yeah. Well, the first night all of us were there, and I was trying to think about, wow, did they get a van or something and like throw us all in a van? We went to a dinner with David Simon and a couple of other people, and then afterwards, Simon took us all, maybe it was in a van, maybe it was in a couple of cars, but we were all huddled into one thing, and he took us to some of these areas in Baltimore where the crimes that he had been writing about, and the kind of the drug alleys and things like that. So he took us into, like, the first night, took us into some of the sketchiest areas of Baltimore.
Wow.
And he just pointed things out to us, and things were happening all around us. And he would just point out and talk us through it. And so that, I consider that sort of the first ride along. And I can't remember any other ride along I went on, although I probably did, because initially there were plenty of officers around on the set to talk to us. But the last season, I directed an episode about female gangs, and I went on ride-alongs with some officers to different areas that our crew wasn't even allowed to go to. There were what we felt were the really bad areas, and then there were the sixth level of hell areas in Baltimore that you couldn't shoot in, because it was just so dangerous. And so I got a ride along there and got to, and they talked a lot about the gangs in specific to the Baltimore area and female gangs and things like that with me. So that was really fascinating and sad and tragic and the whole mishmash.
I just rewatched that last night. That's a great episode, and we'll talk about it a little more later when we get to talking to you about from the directing point of view. But
okay, yeah. Boy, I haven't seen that one in a long, long time.
That was a good one. Yeah,
that was a tough one.
Part of what at least Tom and some of the other people were happy we were doing this podcast was because you said you couldn't watch the episodes. Well, you can't. It's not streaming anywhere. The only way I got to rewatch part of them was I got it from my local library, and then Tom sent me the DVDs. Of course, you can buy the DVDs, but obviously it's not readily available. So hopefully maybe it'll help get a little more fire under the pot.
Yeah. And I've got that DVD set that I never got into, and it's now packed away someplace.
Oh no!
So
I've got the massive box set as well.
Hopefully, keep our fingers crossed. Something this year.
Well, yeah, I'm just shocked it's not streaming anywhere, because rewatching the show, I rewatched the show fully about nearly 4 years ago, and then I've just been rewatching certain episodes for this, but I'm just amazed by the relevance of it even now. And I think Susan and I were saying about how it doesn't feel that dated. Obviously, the odd prop or hairstyle might make it stand out a little bit, but it does still feel of this sort of time, really.
It totally holds up. I mean, the social issues have not changed at all. Which is a little disturbing when you're thinking 30 years later. I mean, you could reshoot them with the same script today, and you'd have to change the name of the mayor or somebody,
Yeah.
But it really is still very timely, and also because we shot it in an non-traditional format that was ahead of its time. It also looks current. Because it's not, as we joked when we were talking to Tom, it wasn't shot like Murder, She Wrote, right?
Even though you worked on Murder, She Wrote. Did you know Susan worked on Murder, She Wrote?
Oh, Susan, you did?
Yeah, I did.
Oh.
Yeah, I lived in L.A. for 8 years before I came back to Baltimore, and that was one of the things I worked on for a couple of years. But that handheld camera, although very smoothly done, and then the moving and dancing with the actors and the kind of pacing the show had is really the way cop shows look today. We were doing it 30 years ago. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And it's funny, we think about that it was kind of ahead of its time, but we were going back into time to pull up techniques so that we were ahead of our time after, because that was, I remember Tom always referenced like the French New Wave films, Breathless, the shooting style of those. So they were, and Barry as well. So they referenced a lot of those types of films and used those and brought it up. And that first season where you weren't there was just bonkers with the 16 millimeter cameras, that it didn't matter if you were looking this way one way and you're looking that way. There was no continuity. They were just, and it
Exactly.
was, as actors, it was incredibly freeing, and it was really beautiful. So when the second season came around and we had a different DP by then, and we were changing up things because in some ways the network needed some changes in terms of the camera not making everyone ill who was watching the show, and also the darkness of it. You know, I think the actors at that point went, "What? I thought, what's going on here? I thought we were doing it this way. We're doing it this way now. Okay." And it was an adjustment for the actors to kind of now, oh, we're kind of slowly moving into a, there's corporate fingers all over this right now. And Tom kept everything as pure as he could, but there were certain things that needed to change in order for the show to go on.
I remember feeling some of the later seasons certainly felt a little bit more action packed in places, didn't they? And so you could see some of those changes.
Isn't that funny? Yeah. And that was for actors, that was very interesting because we were in, you know, kind of a pretty heady, intellectual, heart-based family kind of show. Family meaning the family of like Andre and I being almost like an old married couple, and the other their relationships. But man, when they threw in some of those action things with the gunfights and all of that, it was really fun for actors. It was really, really fun. I'm sure for the filmmakers, you know, for everyone else as well. Susan, you might be able to speak to that. But you had to just kind of work in a different way for those episodes. But then you went back and you did the stuff that we were more akin with.
Car chases and gun battles are never easy for the camera crew.
And Tom liked to mix it up like that.
For sure. I felt one of the questions, and maybe it would come later, but we can jump into it now, that idea of, so you said that, you know, that the camera work felt very freeing, but maybe changed a little in the second season. But when Jean came in, still handheld, still 16 millimeter, still constantly moving, never on a dolly, unless it was on his butt dolly, you know, that where he's on the floor with the rails where he's moving around. But this idea that was one of the questions, was how, if you'd come from traditional television filmmaking where you might have one or probably two cameras on dollies or on tripods on the set, and everything is blocked very specifically for the lighting, and you have to hit your marks. And this show was never that. There were never marks. The camera was constantly moving. And so you guys, it had to become a dance, not just with, okay, it's not just Jean and Boots coming through pulling focus. It's the boom operator, and it's Josh, you know, with the Chinese lantern. But you guys were so great. And we talked about this on some of the other episodes. So how was that as an actor, and how different that is from traditional, at the time, traditional television filmmaking?
I mean, yeah, for me, it was the best situation possible. Because it always felt, I mean, it still does to a sense, but it's just it's a technique of hitting marks and doing all of that stuff, which is great. And but this was something just completely different. And in a way, you know, you as an actor, you had to keep what you're in, you know, the actor stuff, the intentions in the scene, what you needed from the other character, what the scene was about, etc., while incorporating these necessary technical elements that were going on that you didn't know oftentimes where they were going to end up. Because Jean would have his eye here, and this other eye was going out here, looking for areas, looking I mean, it was just it was like the coolest thing. And so he would move, and as we became more used to that process, the crew became characters, unseen characters, but for us, characters in what we were doing. And so it was amazing to see how the actors figured out, and the crew figured out, how to glide and move and duck under and give way to that, and to keep their intention in the scene. And there was a lot of times where people were, you know, you get smacked into or something like that, or the actors hit but you just kept going. You just kept going, and you just included that in the scene. And that was really, it was just very freeing. It was very freeing. Yeah.
It just occurred to me while you were talking, because I wanted to ask, have you worked on any productions that were similar to that? But then I thought, was it more like theater than television because of that? In a sense, live, almost a live feeling, because we weren't cutting after 3 lines of dialogue and resetting the camera. We were going through maybe 3 or 4 pages, and you guys had to do the whole scene,
yeah.
right? Can you compare it to anything?
In some ways it felt like theater, but it was its own beast. It was its own thing. It was unlike anything I'd ever been a part of. I couldn't say it was theater, but there were elements that, especially when you're running through lots of stuff. And in my recollection, there was an awful lot of improvisation in those early years. And actors felt like because of that, that they could also improvise. They could also throw in different types of dialogue. They could, take things out. And yeah, it was its own beast. And I think if you came from a world where you were locked into this is how you do it, and especially if you just showed up and you did one episode and like guest stars or something, and then it went away, either they felt a great freedom or it was completely, and there were plenty of people who showed up who did stuff and they didn't understand what the hell we were doing. And they didn't understand how any of it would match. They didn't understand about, and we also shot we shot some pretty long hours, even with Jim Finnerty, like, keeping his eye on the old,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Jean talked about how short the hours were, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
He had a
I remember 12-hour days every day, so I don't know. Maybe,
but Jean could have gone for 24 hours. So
he was
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
I asked him about his stamina and how he managed to keep that camera on his shoulder all the time,
Yeah.
and every day. It's just amazing.
And he was kind of a lean guy. He wasn't
he was sort of a Zen master too, so maybe you guys had a connection there.
Maybe. What was the name of the other camera guy who came in years later, who was sort of, he did
Alex,
second?
it was about half. Alex was on the B camera, and I would bump up on the B camera with Alex Zakshevsky. And then when Jean left, Alex took over and they did about the same amount of episodes, like 55, 57 each, something like that. Yeah, so that was Alex.
No, he was great too.
Yeah, and then Dave bumped up to Boots left, and Dave bumped up there. So and Alex, had been on the show, like you said, as the B cameraman. So he also had to learn that dancerly thing. But Alex probably had some of that in his genes already before he got there. And I guess I should have asked Jean who influenced that. I would assume Jean brought him in on the B camera. So maybe somebody that Jean had worked with before, so the styles weren't too different, right? And Alex did the same thing, where he'd be looking around with the.
Oh, he was great. It was great. And the other thing is they both had the right personality for being on that set, because it took a certain type of person to be on that set and to move through those years. Really did.
Totally chill.
Yeah.
The both of them chill in different ways, but
Yeah.
both of them were totally chill individuals, and absolute pleasures to work with, both of them. Absolutely.
Definitely.
They're like, I don't remember either one of them being rattled. I'm sure they were, but I worked with cameramen that got rattled and everybody knew it, because they'd take it out on everybody.
Yeah.
But those two never did.
Yeah.
Never did.
They were great.
There was enough stress on the set, I think, right?
Yeah.
So should we jump? So would you be okay? Should we jump into talking a little bit about Andre?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously just a horrible shock, and obviously lost many cast members, since that time, starting with Ned and John Polito, and then, of course, more recently, Richard.
And I think even Yaphet wasn't that long ago either.
Yaphet, yeah.
And Yaphet, yes, Yaphet. But certainly just Andre was such a shock. And I thought about you, and obviously how close you were on the show, but I don't know. I didn't know you guys personally. Well, I knew Andre a little personally because he went to the Unitarian church I went to, and they became members there and bring their son, and I would run into them there sometime.
Huh.
But
Okay.
and Chris and I talked about this a little bit about how obviously it was an ensemble cast, but you guys were sort of like, the epicenter in some ways of the show. So just if you want to, anything you want to say about him and what it was like working with him, and did you stay connected afterward or
Right.
not? And and just any thoughts, because he was such a presence, and also just so young to just go so
Yeah. Yeah.
horribly shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Well, I here's the interesting thing is I don't remember how we initially connected except for on the show. I don't remember how we first, on how we first met on the show. I don't know if we had an initial, um, what that initial connection was other than that we both, it was very clear to me. I had a deep love for acting and dialogue and words and things like that. And Andre, a lot of the actors on our show did, but Andre, it was very clear to me, it was highly important to him. And the words and the choice of words and how they came out of his mouth and how they landed on his partner. Um, it was incredibly important. And that to me I went, that's the person I want to spend my life with. This is the person I want to
Wow.
this is the one I want to go to battle with. This is the one I want to, spend the majority of my time with on this set. And I loved most of the other actors, but Andre was a real special gift for that, for all of us. For all of us. And I don't know if you remember this stuff, but and also the the line between cast and crew was often just non-existent. It was just you were hanging out with the crew as much as the cast when there was downtime. And Andre was, I just remember chess, crossword puzzles, uh, you know, uh, um, a lot of I'm a horrible rapper, and he put up with my rapping, and then then he would rap with me, and we would create scenarios on set. That to me, I just laughed. I would just laugh my ass off constantly around him. And he was also, incredibly serious and deep and all of that. But for me, um, can't imagine what that show would have been like without him at all, or what my partnership with, you know, uh, without him would be. And yeah, we spent a lot of time in those Cavaliers rehearsing, talking about life, making sure our microphones weren't on so that people could pick up on what we were saying. um, um, and in the first year we lived in the same building, second year, same building, third year we lived out in Homestead, about 2 blocks away from each other.
Where were you the first and second years? Were you down in Fells Point?
First year we were down on the waterfront at that hotel that was where everyone stayed.
That one around the corner, sort
Yeah.
of down on the pier?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think
I
the
should know the
wharf,
name of it.
something
Call
wharf, something of the I don't know. But that's where everyone
somebody's
was.
wharf.
And then we were there, and I think for the next 4 episodes, of the second season, and then everyone kind of found their places after that. But, so we spent a lot of time in each other's presence. And, yeah, yeah, it was good. It was a good person and a freaking phenomenal actor. And
Mm, mm.
when I first heard it, um I was shocked like everyone. I imagine like many other people were shocked by it, and thought about Amy and the kids, um, and and I the I think it was the second day I got on YouTube just to watch some episodes or to watch some scenes because I literally I can't remember, um, the beauty and brilliance and greatness of
Mm.
those moments, and my daughters walked in, and that's the first time they'd ever seen Homicide,
Oh, wow.
and so
Mm.
they got to experience that as well, and I think that, maybe people will get to, re-experience him at that particular age and space and time.
Yeah. And what great, you think of people talking about chemistry between male and female actors,
Yeah.
but you guys had an amazing chemistry. And um one of the things, I think it was one of the questions farther down, but your character arcs did this. Your character arcs went opposite
Mm,
on the show.
mhm,
You were sort of the innocent at the beginning,
yeah,
and he was the know all see all,
mhm,
the god of the detectives basically.
right,
And then and Tom mentioned, that that Andre had said, I've already done everything I could possibly do in the box. What are you going to do with me? I mean, he sort of felt like he'd been boxed out. He was
mhm,
like, what are we going to do next? And they came up with this idea of the stroke, which then made him the vulnerable innocent.
yeah,
And then your character becomes, cynical and sort of hardened in a way that Andre's character was at the beginning. And so there's this weird sort of 180 on your characters, by the end of the show. And obviously he left the season before. But can you talk a little bit about, as an actor, that was an incredible arc for you.
yeah,
And also you were one of the few actors that, I think there was just four that were in every episode
mm.
from beginning to end. It must have been great to have that stretch.
Well, I like that you put it like that with those yeah, and it's very interesting that we seemed to be going in different directions as characters. It didn't, it didn't necessarily feel that way while it was happening. But my character becoming more cynical and a vigilante really by the end. And even though Andre's character did some, kind of iffy things in the box, or, he had a moral center because of the, his Jesuit training and all of that stuff, that saw him through, the stroke and, and when, to the end when he left. Um, so Tim, my character didn't have that. My character had a moral thing that wasn't connected to a god or anything like that.
Mhm.
Um,
Good point.
but he was attempting to stick with that, and he did for quite some time. And then as all the layers are kind of removed where, he's now questioning not quite he's bisexual. So he was questioning why he would be straight or why he would be just that. Why couldn't he be a lot of different things? Why couldn't he be a vigilante? Why couldn't, and there didn't seem to be any no's in place. But even being a vigilante, there was a
Hmm.
moral creed there.
He's the right, the wrong, right?
There was something that he was going after, which for Andre's character, that was completely out of he would never have done anything like that in under any circumstances.
Mm.
Yeah.
With the vigilante thing, I was just rewatching Sniper recently, and there's a bit where Tim, I think he's trying to get into the mind of the killer, and he gets his gun out and starts pointing it at some random people near the police station.
Mm,
And we're thinking with where Tim ends up.
mm,
Was that like a hint of where
mm.
he was going, or was that just for him getting into the sort of eyes of the killer a bit?
Whew, that's a really good question. I mean, I think, Tom had, an overall vision, but within what was
Mm,
going on during the seasons, I'm not sure if he, I think what Tom would do is he would follow the breadcrumbs that he had laid. So if there's that, it's like, oh, where can that go to from there? And then he's realizing, oh, I've set this stuff up for him to become a
Yeah.
vigilante. In the first season, I'm hanging around
Mm.
in a black leather jacket at the end of the first season. Oh, a black leather jacket. Where could that go to? Is there something with Tim and his sexuality? It's like a black leather jacket. But he
Right.
does, but that's the
Iconic, right?
brilliance. It's the brilliance of what he would do, and he did that with all of
Mm.
our characters, and he certainly did that with Andre, because Andre gave him a lot. Andre showed up with a lot, gave him a lot, and Tom took a lot from what he had to offer.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
I really don't think you could point to any other show that had a cast like that. I mean, I just think because
Pretty
so
good.
distinct,
Mm.
not just the number and having all those people working in,
We had a lot of
yeah, a
people.
lot of people, but also incredibly distinct. There was nothing cookie cutter about any one of you. There was nothing cookie cutter. Everybody was really their own, they're really truly their own character, not just another cop or another, female cop, or
Mhm.
really cool.
Yeah. Something that I had read that I went, "Oh, right, that's right. We had more subplots going on in that first season, the first couple of there was more subplots happening
Mm.
because we had so many fabulous actors, and
Mm.
Tom and Barry wanted a lot of different things going on. They started fine-tuning that into, like, one murder thing and then some the classical A, B, and C story, but they still did that throughout the years to try to kind of, play both sides of the fence in a way for what you know, and, it's because of what you said, Susan, about, like, how many incredible characters were very individualistic in the way they looked at things, and we could see things through a lot of different people's eyes about one event or a number of events. And the audience got to go, "Oh, right, I'll follow that. Oh,
Mm.
no. Oh, I think he's right. No, it's because of those separate voices, those, very beautiful the writing."
The writing was just it's terrific. I watched all 3 of the episodes that you directed last night, and,
Hmm.
We
Oh,
both did, didn't we?
wow.
yeah, we
Like,
did.
we're
Yeah,
watching.
we did. We did our
Oh,
homework.
last
Yeah,
night?
last night. Yeah.
Wow.
I was watching I think it might have was the Y chromosome also have the sub story with Belzer and his girlfriend and her getting beat up in the bar?
I believe so. That's the
Might have been
gang story, the
the
gang,
same one.
episode.
But yeah, but just that episode, well, all the writing was good through all the episodes, but there's so much the writing was so specific to, obviously it would have to be, but so specific to the characters' personalities and the way they spoke, and like each one of you even had your own language. I mean, if you watch, and I don't remember if it was that episode or Shaggy Dog.
That was a great episode.
I love Shaggy Dog.
Yeah, and Meldrick ends up being placed with Andre, because you guys had your tiff happening, and you were not then partnered with Andre for a while. And it really struck me there, Andre and Clark's, just the cadence of the way they spoke and moved was really so different
Mhm.
to the way you guys did. There was some sort of chemistry dance going on with you and Andre.
Right.
But it worked really good with that plot,
Mhm.
because the plot was that they couldn't stand working
There you
together.
go.
And you could really see it in their personalities and their language and the cadence of their speak and the way they moved it just really powerful stuff, really just engaging.
Yeah, as the writers, when they put well, let's just take Andre and I, when they split us up and they put him with, like, Danny Baldwin, or they put him with, Melissa, or they put him with other, the interesting thing is that we had the experience of being together for Andre and I as partners for 6 years, and we had developed a language between ourselves as the characters that kinda comes through, especially in those tight little Cavalier scenes where we could be talking, going on about an idea, and he's going on it. We're not even, it looks like we're not even listening to each other. And it's just rat-a-tat-tat. And then someone will say something and the other person will say, piss off or whatever. It's like, oh yes, they are listening to each other. They're not just in their own little worlds. And that's sort of how we did it. We would have almost like a philosophical discussion. Then all of a sudden it became incredibly cuttingly personal. And the writers wrote towards that. And if you had like Danny and Andre maybe in one episode together as partners, then you had to be very clear that they didn't like each other, or that there was something about that they didn't like. But again, the writers would make it all work out in a beautiful, synchronistic way.
Yeah, and always underlining that was the fact that that Andre's character didn't want to have a partner at all.
Yeah.
He was the lone wolf, the lone intellectual.
Yeah,
right?
and Tim was so much about, hey man, can I come over for something to eat? You want to come over to my place? Can we hang? Like, no, I've got a wife.
Right, not even have a beer. Right. I gotta go.
And then if
I'm
he
having
did-
club soda and then I'm leaving the bar. Right.
And then if he did, like I was like this, like a dog lapping it up going, hey, yay, I'll be there. What time? Should I bring anything? Flowers?
It's interesting you mentioned dogs. I was just thinking, like, Tim's a bit like a Labrador and the Homicide unit a bit like a load of cats, It's like...
Yeah. Oh my
That's
gosh.
funny. So do you want to talk about those, about your 3 episodes that you directed?
What was that transition like to directing? It must have been quite interesting.
Well, so I mean, this is something I remember very clearly because I remember it was really clear why I did it. I was mentally and emotionally capable of doing it because of certain things in my life had been moved away, and I was now like fully like, here I am, I'm present, I can do whatever on this show. And also, I remember that season, I'm not sure, but we had a couple of directors that didn't throw a good party. That didn't treat the older didn't treat the older actors in with the respect that they were just getting the shots. They were just doing the thing, and they were younger, and they didn't treat the older actors with that kind of respect. And it became, I think we had like maybe a couple of them in a row, and I went, God, this is horrible. We got to do something about this. Maybe I'd direct an episode. And I remember Clark directed his first episode that season, or maybe he'd done it before. So I knew that an actor could direct other actors that they had been working with. And Clark had already directed stuff before, and he was really good. And so I thought, well, I'll just do it. And Tom went, okay, you can do it. And so I remember I shadowed Clark and I asked him a bunch of specific questions. And then I remember I had a notebook that was my notebook of, remember, if you don't know something, it's okay. You don't have to know everything, and you don't know everything, but ask this person. And I would have like, I even had like the caterer in there. Like I would listen to whoever had an idea about something, because I knew that I didn't have all the answers to any of it. So, and I had that written down. Remember, the caterer even has something to say about your scene. So that's how I got into that. And of course, the first episode, I was just out of my depth completely. And everyone knew it. And I remember the first time that Andre decided that he wasn't going to come out of his trailer at the time that we needed him to come out of his trailer. And which was kind of the first like, oh, I see. The people that I work with,
Interesting.
Even the people I work with.
See, I don't remember that. It's almost like the way we shot it. I don't even remember you guys having time to be in your trailer. If they're, I guess were they parked in the down underneath the sets? That's so funny.
They were around. I mean, sometimes I don't think we even brought trailers with us, and we just like hung out in cars if it was. But that time there was a trailer, and I think Amy was in that episode as well.
Oh yes, yeah. Yeah, she
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
but he was being hard-nosed on me. He didn't want and I went, "Okay, I guess I just," but I knew that's the one thing, that's the one superpower I had is I knew what the actors because I'd seen how they responded with other directors and direction. I knew that I had to back off, let him do his own thing. I knew that when Yaffa was going to have maybe an outburst on the set, I knew how to handle that, and what he wanted to do is he just wanted to be listened to and do a scene, one take his way. Fantastic, we can do all that, and I knew all of these little tricks or whatever you would call it. And some of them worked and some of them, they went down in flames.
But they let you direct 2 more times, didn't they? So you didn't do too badly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And the Shaggy Dog one was just the biggest joy. It was so much fun, and working with Steve Allen and his wife it was just great. That was just great fun. I mean, all of the subplots in there were really, really, it was really fun for me. And that was the one where, I don't know, Susan, if you remember this, is I had some pretty great ideas about filmmaking for that episode and that I was going to do something different than the normal Homicide style. So I think Jean got a camera that would spin when a car came by so that it would spin so that it looked like the car was going from upside down to right side up. And it's like they got a
Wow, I
hold
don't
of this
remember
stuff
that.
and they did these things and then it all got cut from the episode.
Oh,
All of my
no.
stuff because
Oh.
Tom went, that's not the style of what we're doing. So I was kind of learning as I was going along.
Mm.
And then when we got to the Y chromosome, that was a whole other challenge because I was the only one who wanted the actress who was the main actress. And the producers didn't. And so I went, but
No.
by gosh, I'm sticking.
You mean the gang
Yeah.
actress? She was absolutely terrific.
Wasn't she great? She was.
So you had a part in casting
Oh, yeah,
her.
yeah. Yeah. And then when and I remember when
Oh.
she came down, she said, "Hey, I want to tell you something for this, there's some curse words in here. I'm not going to say any curse words." And I went, "What?" And we didn't like, and at the time it was always damn it or hell or something. She wouldn't do it.
Wow.
She had a obligation to herself and to not curse.
Interesting.
And I went, you're a gang leader. You're like, and I remember I talked to the writers and they went, "Oh, well, you got to do something about that, Kyle. We've got to keep all of those curse words in there." We fought the network to get a certain number of curse words into
No.
And I went, "Oh, okay." And so I remember the first day of shooting, I walked into a trailer. I said, "Listen, I've got to do this. I need you to say these curse words." And she said, "I'm not saying one of them." And I went, "Okay." And I walked out and I told the Yashimura, I said, "She's not going to do it." He goes, "What? Won't she just say damn?" I said, "You can try, but she won't do it. I'm okay not doing it. Let's just do it without curse to someone who doesn't curse. Let's do that." So it was my first time that I really had to deal with like the producers kind of coming in and like trying to get me as the director. And it was really it was a fantastic opportunity to figure out how to do that kind of stuff. And it happened, it occurred throughout the entire, like the first 4 days, I think they were really pushing hard to get her to say those words. And then they let it go. The last 3 days, they just let it go, and she was great. She was just great.
At least they didn't try and get somebody to dub the words in.
Yeah, they didn't, but they didn't. They didn't.
Niecy was the one that got shot at the end. What's her name?
I can't
Crystal.
remember.
Samantha Brown. Tanya Crystal.
Tanya, I think.
Oh, Crystal was her nickname. Yeah.
Anyway.
She was terrific in that episode. Really believable.
Yeah, really fun to
And
direct.
and I didn't even notice there were no curse words. She was so tough.
Yeah.
She must have known she didn't need it because she was one tough bitch. I mean, she was.
But I will say this, I do appreciate Yash for doing what he did. Those were his words. That was his script. He was protecting what he did. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate him, kind of getting on me, and it all is just part of the process. So I really like that.
How were Steve Allen and I just had her
Was
name.
it is it Jane?
His wife.
Is it
Jane
Jen
Jane yeah,
Meadows?
Meadows, Jane Meadows. Yeah, how so that's some old school. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like Murder, She Wrote stars,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They were great.
They were fantastic.
So how were they to direct? Did you feel a difference between directing them and either a regular cast or other guest stars that were not that kind of like super old, the OGs? They were the OGs,
Yeah, they were the old OGs. But the great thing about him and about Jane was incredibly open. She really wanted to do whatever it took. Steve would just be Steve, and he would just do his thing. But Jane was the one who would stay on him. Get your lines done. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to do anything. And we spent
Really?
and we spent a lot of time together. And if you recall where we shot in their apartment, it was a hoarder's apartment. And it was a hoarder's apartment. And I saw the apartment when we went in, and I went, this is what I want. We can clear out some things, but keep it pretty much like this. And when we got there to shoot, they had cleared everything out.
Oh no.
So all of a sudden, my little storyline of them being maybe hoarders was gone. But I got to spend, because Richard knew them.
Oh.
And he loved them. And so we got to have lunches together. And
the comedian world, I guess they know each other from that. Yeah.
Yeah. And Steve Allen, years and years and years before, had Jack Kerouac on his show. And it was one of the first times you have a recording of Jack Kerouac reading On the Road. And so that, to me, Kerouac was a huge hero of mine. So I got to talk to him about Kerouac. But they were lovely together, just lovely. She would do whatever it took. And I asked her to do like one thing that no one had ever asked her to do. And she had a wig. And I said, would you do this scene without the wig? And she went, absolutely. No one's ever asked me that. Absolutely. And she thought it was brilliant. And I just, okay.
Right.
That was a delight. They were a delight to be with and direct, and funny as hell.
That was funny. And the format of that, I also thought about, as a director, the format of that, much of it was in flashback. Because it was Michelle Forbes attending
the convention, isn't she?
The Emmy convention,
Yeah.
getting an award, and then like sitting around at the bar bullshitting with the other guys and telling the story as sort of like, okay, here's my story. See if you can figure this one out. Figure out how this murder occurred, or and then it was all in flashback. Was that interesting as a director? Or did it not really matter once you're in scene? It doesn't matter if it's a flashback or not. I mean, did it in your head chronologically putting it together as a director? Or?
No. I think when I came up with the this little thing of how to get into the flashback, then to me that everything kind of fell into place, and it was the camera going into black and coming back up into a scene, which I hadn't seen on Homicide before, and they kept in, which was. Thank you so much, Tom, and all of the editors, and Cindy. And but that was when I did that, I went, okay, got it. Now in me, it's clear in my head, flashback. And so it was great fun working with Michelle. Michelle had hopefully she had a great time on that episode, because it was an awful lot of fun. And she was surrounded with some great actors at the table, the drinking and eating stuff. And but it wasn't hard to keep it straight in my head at all. It was great fun. And that was with the all the hillbilly stuff, right? As well?
Yes. Is that right? Yeah, there was a chase and things. Yeah.
Yeah. So we went from, we were like going all over the place to, with all these different subplots.
Yeah, you have one of the rare car chases in Homicide in that episode, don't you?
I just watched it. Remind me, what hillbilly stuff?
It was where I think it was Garrity and Callie's character had gone out to find, because it was there'd been a killing, maybe something in Pigtown or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. And they end up in a fisticuffs, don't they? And there's a scene in the bar where he's got the steak on his arm.
That was fun. Yeah, that was his idea to grab the old school steak. And then he's in love with the woman who's tending bar.
That's it.
Oh, those were, and Peter was just a delight. Another like actor who's just an actor's actor. Just a delight. And
Mm,
Callie as well. Oh my God, they're all
Yeah.
wonderful.
yeah. One random question, if I may,
Mm.
because you brought it up earlier, and you don't have to name any names or anything like that. But what you've been directed and you have directed? So I suppose what makes a good director for actors on a TV show, and what makes a bad one, or at least through Homicide?
Well, look, if you're a director who's, I mean, I don't know how it used to be. If you're just an episodic director who goes from show to show to show, it's very difficult, to do
Mm,
that and show up with a new cast and to be the guy who's going to now lead them through this, 7 or 8 days of shooting. It's a very difficult thing to do. Um, and some people do it very, very well, and they understand the situation they're coming into, and they have respect for the people that they're with them, and they have a passion about what they do, and they're not just calling it in.
mm,
They're not just like what we call traffic cops, move here, move there. Um, those on in a TV series, those are the people that I like, and the ones that can come up to you, even if they've never said anything to you for the whole thing, come up and say, "Hey, let's try this because I think your character." Oh, okay. But they're not imposing something on me that is antithetical to what your character would do just to get a shot. Just that's it. It's
mm.
just to get a shot. I need you to be here in this and crook that stuff to me is people do that and they can do it very well. And some actors, I can't. I don't respond very well to that stuff. So, but having a light in their eyes in a way that they're
Mm.
interested, they're here with all of us, and they're gonna, they know they know what their position is. They're not gonna reinvent the wheel. And certainly on Homicide, when you saw that happen, it didn't go over well.
Did not go over well.
Didn't go over well.
Yeah.
Yeah. They wanted to impose their style on a style that was already like what I did.
And you knew your character. So we
Yeah.
talked about this in another episode where
Mm.
people would push back and say, my character wouldn't do that. Because you knew your characters inside and out. So yeah, it was a dance for the directors, quite a dance for the directors to come in and also the idea that they were all feature film directors coming into like the 180-degree
Mm.
opposite of how you shoot a feature film, right?
Now, but Susan, as you know, we did have some feature film directors, but we also had some people right out of college.
Yes, we did.
We had people that they had seen maybe their thesis film or something like that, and they decided they're going to give them a shot.
Or had won one award for something.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Did that usually work out? Or? Without naming names, but
Well, I mean, sometimes, but there were, again, I think it was that one year, it just did not. And they were fine. They went on and had fine careers and stuff. But for us, where we were at in Baltimore on location, it just didn't, that type of thing just didn't work for us. We weren't a theoretical group. We were basically a let's get this shit done and let's make it the best we can
Right.
make it.
Yeah.
Mm.
I have a question. It might be not really as pertinent, but I'm reading Barbara Streisand's memoir, and which, by the way, is absolutely terrific. And we need to talk about your book at the end too.
Oh, okay.
But she talks about, you know, we're gonna let you talk about. She talks about
I'm not Babs.
directing. So you're the director and you're acting in the scene. And you're in essence directing yourself, but also, and this may not really, and you can tell me if this doesn't really apply, because obviously let's say Yentl, she's in every scene. And you as a director on Homicide are not in every scene because it's this gigantic ensemble cast and 5 storylines happening. But she talked about what she loved to do, the ability as an actor directing, was sometimes in some scenes. And she did not like to cut when things went wrong. She just said, keep rolling, let's do it again. And she would prompt the actor she was acting with, often well, not always, but when the camera was over her shoulder, so that she could get the performance that she wanted. even by going off script and maybe saying something that's not in the script to get the kind of reaction that she wanted. But did that come into play at all, this idea of not just directing yourself, but being in the scene, working with the other actors, and maybe doing a little directing as you're doing, you know what I mean? Within the scene as the actor. Does that make sense?
Hmm. I don't think that I really don't think that I was competent enough to do that. I mean, if anything, I would possibly touch someone's wrist to move them out of the way of the camera or something like that. But to
Mm.
Mm.
do that, I'm okay off camera coaching someone through a scene and saying stuff and getting something out of them because I know that I can kind of cut the coaching out. But as an actor, I just wasn't, I don't think I was capable of doing that. And I was uncomfortable being an actor in those as well.
Mm.
I would have Frank yell action or cut or something like that. But I could hardly wait to just get out of my clothes and um, get back to being a director, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
interesting.
and,
Mm.
and when I've directed since then, shorts and things like that, and I've had to be in them. It's um, it's been better, but I've never been that. I've never done that thing of being able to direct during a scene, you know, while I'm in it. That's just
Mm.
takes someone like Barbara Streisand, you know.
That was a very personal story
Yeah.
too.
I mean, I think also another thing is that, sometimes you'll be asked to say things off camera to get the other character riled up or to get something else
Mm.
out of them and improvise and go off. Um, and it's a funny thing. I also feel uncomfortable doing that as just as an actor. I mean, I'm thinking about, Robert De Niro in King of Comedy. And all from what I understand, all the things that he would be saying to Jerry Lewis off camera to get reaction. And Jerry Lewis is brilliant in it because of him being Jerry Lewis, but also because of him being baited by, De Niro off camera.
Interesting.
Which I think is an incredible technique. And if you're up for doing that, do it. Yeah.
Interesting. And then obviously the dynamic of Jerry Lewis being a director,
Yeah.
his
Yeah. Yeah.
usually directing himself and not in that case, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great movie.
Yeah. It's a great movie.
Yeah. Well, back to acting, if I may. Are there any particular episodes that were really sort of challenging for you or to stand out for you?
I would say they all had their challenges because the writers built that into
Mm.
the scripts. Um, you know, the easy one is Three Men and Adina, which was a
Mm.
huge challenge, an acting challenge, and also just delightful to be doing every single day. But there was nothing. I would say there wasn't anything that none of it that any of us were not up for. Um, we were really willing to kind of, you know, to go there.
Mm.
I think the stuff with the trigger alert, finding out about my was my uncle or my father
Uncle.
molesting me as
Uncle.
a child. Um, that was that was challenging because we wanted to get it right.
Mm.
We wanted to get how the audience would react to that right. And at that particular time in the 90s, um, there were it was just a very different way of looking at something which is just continues now, perhaps.
Mm.
And that one ended up being the one that and I never looked at, I never remember about fan mail or anything like that, but that was the
Hmm.
one where I remember getting tons of fan mail and I went and
Really?
reading it, I went, "Oh, television can make a difference and
Wow.
maybe make a difference in people's lives and how they relate to things and they're able to go, oh, and then write, they're able to write to those, the person who was on screens kind of standing in And it was it was moving to read those letters and to, yeah. So we got it right, but it was challenging feeling while we were doing that episode. Yeah. But nothing, I can't remember anything else unless I was in a horrible headspace and showed up at work and they went, "You've got to do this." And I'm going, "What? Ah, I refuse."
No.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Maybe something,
No curse words today.
something like that. Yeah, exactly.
Was there some satisfaction in I know you mentioned the real cop, Pellegrini. Is that Pellegrini? You know, how much it affected his life that the Adina Watson, which was Tanya Wallace, I believe, in real life, was never solved. Was there some satisfaction for you and the character that was revisited in Requiem for Adina, where, you know, he sort of had had to put away Tim had to put away his obsession with that case, and he basically, I think, in one part he puts the stuff in the drawer, but I think in the last shot he puts it in the trash can. I think he dumps it to get it out of his life as much as he could. Obviously, the physical things, but obviously would still be in his head.
Yeah, and as I recall, I believe that was made. Tom brought a bunch of things from the case. Well, not a bunch, but a couple of things from the case that that he wanted me to have for that. I don't even really know how to speak about that. You know, it's because I knew while it was happening and while we were shooting it, you know, this is a piece of Tom and a piece of this person, this girl that's being set aside now, and how that would feel to him or to relatives of her or to, you know, I didn't know what I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to speak about that. I don't know what any of that would mean. But it was satisfying in a way to do that as an actor. Yeah.
And they made a point, I think, Chris, if I remember correctly, the actor said that to honor that case, they left the homicide case also unsolved. They did not want to solve that case on the show because it was still an open case in real life. And so it became
Yeah, it would have been fake and false and all of that stuff that often happens in Hollywood to have a kind of a happy ending, and they don't. Tom doesn't like happy endings.
Not a lot of happy endings on those episodes. All
He doesn't like
122
those
of them.
Right, because life moves on, and that happiness is only going to last for a little bit, and then something else will come. You know, come up. I think he's right on the money with all of that stuff and how he left those, you know, loose ends in a way. Yeah.
They always made you think. I mean, when that screen went to black at the end of the episode, you were left with some weighty feeling.
Yeah.
Really.
It was a very profound show, and I always loved the interplay between you and Andre Braugher, those debates you guys were having in the box and things, and obviously your conversations in the car. And I love that episode Cressetti, where you go and get the cookies, and Andre, it's a whole thing about Andre parking in a particular way. And it's just a fantastic scene. And it sort of starts off so funny and ends up quite profound by the end of it. It's brilliant.
Now, if you could just quickly talk me through that. Now I'm like it's now.
What? Yeah, they're getting the cookies for Cressetti's funeral,
Right.
and they're getting them from a particular shop.
Yes, the Italian shop.
The
yeah.
Pignolis from
That's
the
it,
Caros.
that's it.
Yeah, the
That's
Pignolis,
it.
right.
And Hamilton wants to park in this very small space, and you were like telling him it's too small. And he's like, no, I'm gonna do it, and he makes a real thing of it. And then you guys end up in the shop talking about the price of the cookies.
And how many dozen to get.
Right.
Yeah, and it all just sort of ends. I can't remember exactly how it ends, but it all ends up being quite profound by the time you guys get back to the car, and it's sort of about that sense of loss and things. It's a very, very good sequence.
Right.
It's really good.
There was, and again, beautifully written, and that's perfect for Pembleton's character. I'm going to put this car in this tiny little place because it needs to go there.
And I can do it.
I remember there was another moment, and I can't remember the scene. We were going to tell someone that a child or someone had been murdered, and we went in there, and there was a bowl of Cheerios sitting on the table, and I inadvertently knocked it onto the floor. They kept the cameras rolling. I bent down and am cleaning up these Cheerios off the floor. And I remember when it was happening, I'm going, oh crap, I'm getting emotional. This is not how it's supposed to go in this scene, but it was exactly how, when I haven't watched that episode in years, I might be remembering this completely wrong, but I remember the cereal on the ground and cleaning up the cereal, and it being left in was one of those homicide moments as well. Yeah. Lucky moments. But wow, I'm just now thinking about the car going into that tiny spot and the argument over the money that was being spent, and that was brilliant. It's perfect writing.
Yeah, it's like the minutia of daily life that usually doesn't get written into dramatic scripts like that.
Yeah.
No, so good. What was it like being based in Baltimore for the period of time that you were there? Because you're not a Baltimore native, are you? I don't believe.
No. I don't even seem like a Baltimore native. I'm definitely not I don't even know what a Baltimore native is anymore. I thought I did when I was there. I thought
I am.
I know. There you are. But I came from Washington State, and most of my life was spent in Los Angeles, and so I came to Baltimore, and it was a huge shift. I think that if you didn't have, I think that if you didn't have, I didn't have, when I went there, I wasn't in a relationship. If you were there and you had a relationship that you were in and you had that support, to me, that would have been kind of nice, because I was like, this place didn't make any sense to me. It didn't make sense how people could. It's a beautiful a beautiful thing. People could move out of their home and live next to their parents in the row. Are they called row houses there?
They're called row houses, yeah.
Row houses, or not leave that neighborhood.
I'm not sure if we still have that. We still lead in that, but it was that Baltimore was the city where the most people didn't leave.
Baltimore, the city where people don't leave.
Yeah, it also used to be known as a city of neighborhoods, because the neighborhoods were very distinct and ethnic. And here's the Italian neighborhood, here's the German neighborhood, here's the Lithuanian neighborhood. So yeah, it was known for people not leaving. Yes, I don't know if that's still the case, generally.
But what it did, I think that John Waters is brilliant, and I think that he captured a certain thing that, we went into a lot of homes in Baltimore. We shot in a lot of homes. When I was directing, I saw a lot of homes before we did any of our changing it up to make it a good scene. And we shot in places that didn't get touched, that we went into, and I thought, boy, John Waters captured this perfectly, because at that time in Baltimore, oftentimes it felt like the homes that we chose, that they chose to shoot in, were almost museums to people's eccentricities. So you would go into places and go, oh wow, oh, that's throughout the entire home. That's interesting. And the people were all. Do you remember shooting in that donut factory?
Donut factory. You'd think I would remember that.
We shot in a donut factory.
I remember the bread. It's 30 years ago for me too.
Here's what I remember. This is the peculiarities of and the wonderful eccentricities of Baltimoreans. we were in this in this donut factory, and Andre and I went and walked into the office where we were told this is where you guys will, because we didn't have our trailers with us.
So it's your green room.
Just go hang out in this office. The guy who owns this donut factory. And we're sitting in there and talking, and periodically I'd look up at the walls, and Andre and I would keep talking. Then I kept looking up at the walls, and all of the photos on the walls were of people from behind.
Yeah.
They had all been taken of people from behind.
Their backs.
It wasn't of any one body part or anything. It was just people from behind. And so Andre and I then were getting up and we're walking through this donut factory to go shoot something, and I hear something behind me, and there's the owner taking photos of us from behind.
Wow.
Oh my word.
While we're walking away, which meant
interesting.
something deeply to him, as did these other places that we would go to. There were people they put great meaning into things and then packed that into their homes. In a lot of places we went into. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I would say quirky and eccentric. I would say quirky
definitely.
and eccentric is a good.
John Waters captured it.
A good description.
I loved Baltimore for that.
That's true.
Jeff, who was our one of the prop guys.
Yeah, Jeff Gordon.
Yeah, Jeff went through his potato period. So, and we would go over and hang out over at his place, and his potato period, which is this is a perfect kind of Baltimorean kind of thing, was he had potatoes in different levels of, like a potato he had just bought at the market last week, a potato that had been around for a year, a potato that had been around for 5 years. That was one kind of.
Were there also some that looked like something? Were there also some that looked like potatoes that looked like something?
Sure.
Too?
Carved out potatoes, but he also had a huge thing of a potato tornado. He had figured out a way to put potatoes on something and create a tornado that took up a pretty good part of his loft that he was in. And incredibly artistic.
We shot at least one episode, it seems to me, in his loft.
In his, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember all the episode we shot with the paintings from all of the serial killers? They collected all these paintings of serial killers, and I took the woman that I was kind of having sex in the coffin with, kind of having sex in the coffin with. And we went to this exhibit of these serial killer portraits. And Jeff actually owned a couple of them from the guy who was the guy who did the clown. He dressed up as a clown.
The one that Silence of the Lambs is. Oh, John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah.
Is the clown guy.
So he had.
Oh, so these were genuine paintings. They weren't prop paintings. These were genuine, actual serial killer paintings.
Yeah. And Jeff had like one or two of these things. And so there was just a certain way of looking at life and art that was, I thought, just incredibly specific for Baltimore. Yeah. Really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that.
Well, another thing Baltimore's famous for, Susan probably knows where I'm going with this one now.
Crab cakes.
Is famous for its food.
Ah.
Well, yeah. and so apparently the camera crew are living off fried gizzards.
No, not the camera crew. The Grip and Electric crew. We would just sample them. They would sample them. Oh, good.
And the writers are on Scrapple.
Scrapple.
Yeah, what were you guys surviving off?
Gosh, what we were surviving off of. I mean, it's the first place I'd ever had crab cakes before. And also, is it bluefin crab?
Blue crabs. Yeah, blue crabs. Blue crabs is the one that
blue
we
crabs,
steamed.
and you could get them from under the wharf.
Oh, cool.
Right, you could actually get them from under the wharf. You could go, I mean, there were a bunch of wonderful and not so wonderful bars and pubs around the area that serve food. So that's where we got our food at. And then, so that's what we kind of, we dipped in a little bit into the foods that were, indigenous to that area. But crab cakes were, that was
they're the best.
A favorite of mine.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
but you couldn't live off of them.
No.
You could. Something awful might happen to
Right.
you
Yeah.
at some point, but
Well, that's when you switch to Scrapple. You go from the crab case and Scrapple.
Scrapple. I love that.
And then the
Scrapple
fried.
and gizzard.
Sorry, I didn't mean to shut you down, Chris. The
Yes.
fried gizzard
Gizzards.
story is that when we went into certain neighborhoods that had a lot of neighborhoods had these little convenience store slash liquor store slash food things, and Josh or Joe or somebody from the Gripper Electric crew would go over and they'd come out with a bag, a brown paper bag that would immediately be like translucent from the grease in it. And they would get a bag of fried gizzards and livers. Did they say livers and gizzards?
Yeah.
Gizzards and livers.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time they're like, "Hey, you want to try one?" I was like, and I tried one and they were absolutely delicious. So then it was like this big treat. Like, are you guys going and getting gizzards? Yes, bring them over here. They were yeah, that was a revelation for me. They were good.
I have a. Can I tell you a couple of tiny stories?
Please. Yeah.
So, my wife and I, we weren't married at the time, but we went to India, and we went to this area in India called Ladakh, India, which is sort of the little Tibet of India. So this is where the Dalai Lama has a summer home, and they've a lot of monasteries, Buddhist monasteries up there. And I had been in this ancient monastery room for probably 45 minutes with this monk whose total job is to
Oh, wow.
clean those rooms.
Mm.
And they're very old, so you can't do flashlights or because everything will crumble or something. So he does this thing and you meditate in there while he's cleaning. And I come out of the room into the bright light, and someone goes, "Oh, murder, red to black." And I said, "What?" But before that, oh gosh, I'm telling this wrong. They said, "Do we know you?" "No, I don't think so." Are you from Israel?" I said, "No, I'm not from Israel." "Australia?" "No." "Are you?" "Oh," and they were Israeli. And they said, "Oh, murder red to black." And that's what homicide is
Oh
called
my
in
goodness.
Israel. Murder
Really?
red
Mm.
to black because of the
Interesting.
board.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Wow.
even in a dinky little place in India, it was amazing. And we weren't like a huge, like Seinfeld or anything like that. We were just that. But the people that were, they show up everywhere. And the other story I want to tell in terms of food is that there was a little breakfast place.
Jimmy's. That was around the corner.
Yeah, it was around the corner to the left. If you were looking out, and we shot in there.
Jimmy's. Yep.
We would go there a lot and eat food from there, and also they would bring food in for like breakfast and stuff from there.
Yeah.
But
That's where that's where the writers ate Scrapple over there. Yeah.
Ah.
Scrapple.
That's where they got their
It was
Scrapple
a
at
big,
Jimmy's.
big place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
funny. Making me hungry.
Me too.
Well, food aside, one thing we haven't covered actually is if there was a typical day, what was a day on set like on Homicide? What was the sort of the routine for you on that show, if there was one?
It was showing up, hanging out in our incredible hair and makeup trailer with Pickles and the rest of them. It was a great way to start your day, was to go in there and to touch base with all of them. And we didn't get much makeup or hair done. We were none of the actors wanted to be touched up. They didn't want to have anything on them. So it was pretty quick, but we basically hung out in there because the people in there were so exquisite. And then we would, if we were on location, it was one thing. If we were at at our set, we had trailers. And you basically were either there or you were up on set, hanging out on set. And there were a lot of different rooms in this, on that wharf. And you would just hang out and talk or play, chess or checkers or, it was a pretty, chill chill kind of way, and then you'd get up and work. And, um, there was a lot of laughter. And then there were the days when there wasn't a lot of laughter and
Yeah.
it was a lot of tension. Good God. Look at you laugh, Susan, you laugh. You know about this, the homicide tension.
Yeah, I remember the
Yeah.
laughter more than the tension, but maybe that's because you tend to remember.
Some pretty funny people on that set.
Yeah, I just remember it was like you said earlier, a very family feel. Well, first of all, because we all worked together 6 or 7 years. Well, not everybody was on it that long, but and then everybody would go across the street to the waterfront until we got kicked out of the waterfront, and then everybody would go across the street to
Mhm.
Cooper's, or
Yeah.
we would go down the corner to it wasn't John Brown, John, I can't remember. But also that neighborhood was so beautiful.
Or also another thing is we had pretty epic games of hacky sack.
Hacky sack, yes. And I remember, was I Rodney? Yeah, Rodney
Rodney?
French. I remember something I read recently
Yeah.
about Melissa bringing in a hacky sack too. And I don't know if it was because
Yeah, she loved hacky
yeah, I
sack.
don't know if it was because she made a comment that nobody would throw her the football or something, so she brought the hacky sack in. But yeah, hacky sack became a thing on the set too. Yeah, yeah, I do remember that.
Those are pretty epic games. I mean, we would have most of the I don't even know who was shooting. There was not I mean, we had most of the crew playing hacky sack and, like, really intense hacky sack sessions. And then someone would have to say, "Can we get some help over here?" And you'd have to go, "What? Oh, we're at work."
Where did those games take place? Were they like on the rooftop or something, or was it just anywhere you were?
Anywhere we were. I mean, I remember they would be out on Fell Street, sometimes in the middle of the street, because we would have it locked down. It could be inside, it could be anywhere. I mean, and you'd have it wasn't and sometimes it'd just be 2 or 3 people playing, but sometimes you'd have,
Like
like,
8. Yeah.
20 people.
I never did that. I just watched.
Yeah,
I
and
was too busy working.
you didn't you oh, yeah, that's
I'm
right. You were one
kidding.
of the
I'm
workers.
kidding. I'm kidding. I was sort of thought about it when you were talking about, somebody on the other side of the world recognizing you and in the show. But it still has retained its fans for a long time. What do you think makes it
Mhm.
still, why do you think it's retained its fans? And also, why is it still, I guess we talked about this earlier, why it still feels pertinent today and current. But maybe we already mentioned that. I don't know.
No, you didn't. I wrote down a great answer to that.
Okay, read it.
I wrote down a really good answer to that because I thought it was such a good question. I don't know. I'm not even gonna read it. I'm gonna read So, why have we retained these fans? Because they're stubborn. They're stubborn. They won't move Homicide away from number 1 in their brains in terms of those kinds of, procedural detective shows. Um, I think, you know what? I just think that there's some incredible television right now. I mean, there's stuff that means a lot to me. But I can truly say that in 10 years, 5 years, I won't be thinking about it. It won't be something that I'm going to refer to. I think Homicide, if you factor in the production, the way it was shot, how it was presented, the music, the acting, the writing, that insightful writing that they did, um, that somehow made people that I know feel like it had something to do with their lives, even if they had never lost someone, if they had never being murdered, anything, they hadn't been in those, but something, it felt like something, it was a part of their lives. And I don't know how that happens, but it seems like it's a bunch of factors being thrown in together. It could have been the decade that it was happening in. Through what was happening at that time politically in the world and what was happening in the United States. And, and then it was in Baltimore. There was something also just about Baltimore, the character of that particular town. And I mean, I know they wanted to shoot it elsewhere, but there's nothing like Baltimore. And, I think it felt like people it was even though that we had, you know, quite a few fans, it felt like in a way they were a part of a secret thing. We're the ones looking into this world. If you haven't looked into that world, you haven't seen what we've seen, but we've seen it. And that's and it and that retained that specialness. And I think I don't know why again, one of those things I can't even put my finger on.
Yeah, I think that, and it struck me when I think I rewatched all the episodes, over the past months as we've been working on this, and it struck me, and it wasn't just because I worked on the show. Because sometimes, to be honest, like you were saying earlier, Kyle, I'll watch an episode and have no memory and think that I didn't work on the episode, and then my name would
Right.
be in the credits. So, like, okay, I guess I worked on that. But also struck me that it really connected with people's emotions, I think. All, that people could relate to it, but also, like, there are moments where you literally burst out laughing. It's so funny and so cleverly written. And then fighting back tears by the time, it goes to black, on the last scene at the end.
Mm.
Um really was able to ride those emotional arcs and really communicated, I think, in a way that felt real. It didn't feel like people were acting or
Mhm,
pushing a
mhm.
theme at you or preaching to you. It just felt like you were feeling what life feels like. And it connects. I think it really still connects that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you mentioned that the image from of I think is it the one where they do all the flashbacks of like they connect together from when I first entered the homicide,
The montage at the yeah, at the end of the series,
which
yeah.
shocked me when I saw that. I had no idea that that's what was going to be there, and I was in tears at the end of that as well. I because they did a great thing. They followed someone for my character. They followed someone who was an innocent, and and that's all of our journeys, starting out innocent to going through these different phases, or Andre's character, whatever. They brilliantly wove together all of this stuff in a way that didn't feel false. It felt, yeah,
Right. That you're right.
yeah.
That montage, um, gave you the arc of the whole 7 seasons, but also one thing they did, and they did this not knowing. They did that, Tom said, and Chris, I think, tell me if you remember this too. They did that not knowing that it was gonna be the last episode. They still did not know if they were gonna be picked up or not, but it ended up being the last episode. But also when they tied in the last scene of that last episode has the same dialogue in an alley with Meldrick, and at the end, it's with Meldrick and Michael Michelle's character, but it echoed the same dialogue that was the first scene with Meldrick and Crissetti. So they really, man, they pulled that cycle, the once again the arc overusing that today, um, in that last episode absolutely beautifully. But I think I remember Tom saying they did not know that was going to be the last episode.
Mm, mm,
Yeah.
very interesting.
Mm.
Something occurs to me because you're talking about Clark and his character, and what a joy he was to work with and to have on the set. Oh my gosh. And he's someone that I've stayed in contact with for all these years. Clark was like Clark was always interesting to me because Clark always had this thing where he'd say, I can't remember my lines, or he was always like wasn't getting anything right. But on our show, all of it worked.
Oh, it was
If
beautiful.
you because it was all accepted, though your
Mm.
strengths, your weaknesses as actors, it was all in there, and the writers had their ears tuned into where you were at in your life in that particular year. What were the themes in your life? Did they figure into the Homicide world in some way, shape, or form? Even a character thing that might be a part of you. They were so good about that stuff. And I think maybe that's another thing where there wasn't a lot of false moves because that was included.
Yeah. He was, he started off his career as a camera assistant.
Yes. I'm well aware of that.
And he said he was such a lousy camera assistant. He said he was such a lousy camera assistant. He became an actor. Or was it the story, not that he was a lousy camera assistant, but that he looked at how hard he was working and how hard the actors weren't working. And that's when he decided he was going to be an actor. I think maybe that was the story.
Yeah, I'm going to do that.
I remember. Yeah, he was terrific.
He is great. Great.
I love in the episode you directed where he has that thing with Andre Brown. He's talking about the word love spelt backwards, evil, and like Andre's like, what? It's so funny.
Oh my God,
no.
It is so funny.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, and he said no. He said live spelled backwards is evil.
And he's like, give me some poetic license, Hamilton.
Right.
It's so good.
So do you want to talk about your book?
First of all, the book has no homicide references in it. There's no real, I know, why would you read it then? There's no, but after this thing, I've been thinking there might be a book about homicide that I can write, the inside scoop.
That would be great.
The blue version.
We'll do a tie-in, advertising tie-in with you. It'd be great. I'll have to come on.
There you go. But and there's no real too many entertainment business stories or anything like that. It really is just sort of where I was at a certain point right after the pandemic, and I'd been thinking about acting for years, and I would write down notes about acting. Why do we do this? What is acting? Why is it? A lot of people never have to think of this stuff ever again. Me, I thought about it all my life. So I started looking at that stuff and I started writing it down in more of an orderly thing. And I went, oh, well, maybe this is a book. And so it just kind of stumbled into being a book about my thoughts on acting and, acting. There's acting without the actor. So in a way, it's like the writing without the writer. So in a way, you could say it's the ego or whatever out of the way. What happens when it's just pure this and that other stuff that is, how do I get a job? I need to, oh my God, that audition and all the, I want to be famous. All of that is out and it's just this, and it's kind of musing upon that. So that's what the book is about. You won't get anything out of it reading it. I'm almost certain of it.
The zen of acting.
A little bit, yeah.
Do you want to talk about anything you're working on now or have coming up? People should look for?
Really the last really wonderful film project I did was a thing called The Starling Girl, which came out this last year. And it was at Sundance, and then it won a bunch of awards at some different festivals. Now you can watch it. I think it's on Amazon, and it's a beautiful, beautiful film. And I was really fortunate to be in it. And, doing some little things here and there, still looking to get work. But I've been, writing and directing some theater. And that's sort of what I do.
Yeah. Oh, that's terrific. Well, maybe we'll, and I'm being very optimistic. Maybe we can round some people up and do have a reunion and tie the podcast in with it, and just invite some people to come back to town. Because have you been to Baltimore since they turned the pier into the Pendry Hotel? The pier where we shot Homicide is now a luxury, super super high end hotel.
So you can stay there now.
It has a
oh wow
in the area that was
filled with ghosts.
Exactly. In the area that was the garage is a restaurant and bar, and if you go past that, there's a patio that goes out to a pool area that looks right out over the harbor, and then the two pier sides they built out into the hotel rooms. but the upstairs has been renovated back to its initial purpose. It was initially a ballroom. Do you remember the big, beautiful arched
Oh, right. Yeah, I
windows that
remember
were
that.
beyond our sets? And some of the windows were in the
Right.
coffee room. Absolutely stunningly beautiful. Upstairs is just absolutely stunningly beautiful, restored to its initial purpose, which was as a big, community / ballroom, but now is like,
Right.
you could rent it for weddings and events and things.
And then it became like a police, like
That
gymnasium,
was what it was
basketball
before.
court
Yeah, it
for
was a rec
ki
pier. It was used as a rec
right.
pier, and then it was closed for many years, I think, before the sets were built in it. But and then it sat there for,
Right, we took it
I would
over.
think, a decade or two before it's now this amazingly beautiful restoration of the building. And it's very odd when you go in and try to like you could still go up that famous stairway, but I don't know if you remember on the other side. Well, you would remember because we shot in there. The other side, the ramp that went up, we would have to push our equipment up, but we also shot in there. That the ramp is gone. I guess that became, I don't know, elevators or stairs on that side. I don't remember, but it's really beautiful. So maybe try to talk my way into
Okay.
having a reunion there and have them not charge us an arm and a leg.
Ooh,
We're just gonna go hang out at the
that would
bar.
be really yeah, yeah, yeah. That would be really
Yeah, it would
fun.
be. Well, keep in touch.
I
This has been
will. And if you
terrific.
get Clark on the show, if you get Clark on here, ask him about, the elevator incident
Oh,
and
okay.
and
Do you
the,
wanna tell us about
and
that
the
so we can hear
boating
your version
and the
and then his
boating.
version?
Well, but I would be interested in what actually happened.
Oh,
But the
okay.
second or third day, we were in Baltimore, and we were at that hotel that we were staying at. We were waiting for Clark. We were all going to go out to watch a sports event or something like that, a game on TV or something someplace. And he was like 15, 20 minutes late. And we were just like waiting, going, where is, no one knew him. So we were like, calling him all sorts of names. And we started hearing sounds. And I started walking down the hallway, and then I was hearing, help, help. And I get to where the help is coming from, and it's the elevator, and he's stuck in the elevator between floors.
Oh my
And he'd been in there for
gosh.
like 20 minutes or so. So ask him about that,
Yeah.
what was going on. That was my first introduction to him at Homicide. And then also years later, if you recall, he got a boat. He had a
Mm.
boat while he was there, which was maybe it was a very small sailboat or something. And he took it out before he was going to be shooting, and he got stuck. The sail broke or something, and he couldn't get a hold of anyone. And so no one could get a hold of Clark. And he had to figure out how to get the boat in with the sail being, busted or whatever it was. So ask him about that.
Excellent.
He'll have great stories.
Oh, brilliant.
It was such a pleasure talking to you both. This has really been wonderful.
Thank you for joining us, Carl. It's been great. Thank you.
Well, it was a real pleasure.
So that was Kyle Secor. And Susan, I don't know what you thought about that interview, but I thought there were some very interesting bits there. Is there anything that stood out for you?
Yeah, this has been really interesting because so many times either the writers or Jean or the actors say something I didn't know. Um, Kyle went fairly into depth about the adjustment
Mm,
of the styles and the way it was shot between the first and second seasons. I didn't work on the first season,
mm,
so I didn't see that dynamic playing out, between, the camera and the actors or, anything. He went in fairly deep detail about
mm,
how he thought things were modified after the first season. So I thought that was interesting. I also, like everyone, he was so thoughtful. The deep sort of interior reactions and emotional responses and
mm.
career influences that people talk about this show had for them, it was really interesting. And also the nice, the interesting to hear the relationship between him and Andre.
Yeah, that was very good. There was one story that stood out for me was when he was talking about when they were filming the episode with Adina Watson and Tom Pellegrini, who was the real detective who investigated the real equivalent murder, and Tom was the model initially for the Bayliss character, and there he was in between takes, keeping the actress playing Adina Watson dry from all the fake rain. Carl saw that and just saw it as a way for Tom to be able to sort of make a difference now in a way that he couldn't back then. I found that very powerful, and it didn't surprise us. As I got to know Carl, as you're saying, he's a very thoughtful and observant guy, and for him to have noticed that and read it in that way, it just sort of I could see why he was Bayliss. It was a really great story.
Yeah, and he talked about, and I don't remember if I think Reed might have mentioned this too, the idea that the writers mind, M-I-N-E-D, mind the issues or the personality things or the interests of the actors and incorporated some of those into their personalities in the character, which Kyle mentioned, which I thought was interesting. The whole idea of, we joke with him about being the Zen detective.
Yes.
And some of that was from his, like you said, this sort of thoughtful internal dialogue, I guess he was having a lot.
Yeah.
I also liked one of the quotes I wrote down was, "There's nothing like Baltimore. It's a secret thing." As if you don't know it until you're here, until you experience it, till you live it. People have a lot of negative impressions of Baltimore, and Baltimore has a lot of really good people and a lot of really good things and good things to say.
Yeah. And a very eccentric city too, by the sounds of things. It sounded like there were some very fun locations, and I quite enjoyed the was it a bakery or a donut place where the proprietor...
He talked about a donut factory, and I'm thinking, if I would have remembered anything, it would have been a donut factory.
But
so I have to go. I don't even remember did he mention what? I have to go back and see.
He didn't say which episode it was. No. But I found that story quite funny with the guy who photographs the backs of people. It's I don't know whether that's like is this a donut place? Is it like filling in for the missing hole or something? I don't know. There's something there psychologically, maybe.
Well, it's like Diane Arbus. There's some photographers are have a focus, and well, I guess all photographers do have focus. But
well, you hope they have focus,
on something that speaks to them. Yeah, that was interesting. I love the fact that he said, "Where's the green room?" Is that crummy little office around the corner? Like, you're not going to your trailer. Guess why? Because we didn't bring them.
That makes me feel better when doing low budget films. There's nothing more embarrassing when you're like, oh no, the poor actor's going to have to sit in this room for like 3 hours while we set things up.
We're waiting.
If they're doing that on Homicide, it's good enough for me.
Yeah.
That's great. And there was a funny story about him being recognized in India by, I think it was an Israeli couple, whilst he was on some retreat in India, and suddenly, oh, you're from Homicide.
Bored. They said murder because it was called something else. Murder, red to black.
It's called From Red to Black or Black to Red, or whichever way around that goes now. Is it From Red to Black? Yeah, the case is red and then it goes black when it's solved. That's right, isn't it?
It'd be interesting to see the interpretation of what it's called in all the different places it was translated, where it ended up.
Yeah, I think that's Kyle Secor wrapped up, wasn't it? That was a really great episode.
Yep. Keep listening, everybody. Hopefully they'll start streaming it soon.
Yes. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. And please follow and connect with us on social media. And please share the episode on social media, because sharing is really important. It helps get the word out there about this podcast. If you look up Homicide Life on the Set on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and BlueSky, you'll find us there. And we look forward to chatting with you more on social media, and we will catch you on the next episode. Thank you for listening. Take care.